one of our favorite guests, Tim Cato of The Athletic, has agreed to join us, and that moment is right now here on 105.3 The Fan. And good afternoon, Tim. How the heck are you?
What's up, fellas? I'm doing great.
Right on. Yeah, we're excited. We were just asking some of our listeners, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. How confident should we be that the front office is going to make this team better in the next couple, 2-3 weeks?
There's a lot on the table. I'll start there. I think that, we all know the Mavericks have the number 10 pick. What I've heard, I've had people telling me, like, there are a lot of options, and which route they go, I guess we'll see. Because tonight kind of kicks off the whole plan that Dallas has for this offseason and for this roster rebuild. I guess what I'd say is I kind of view it, I think tonight, if success to me is defined by the Mavericks being able to move off one of their big contracts, be it Davis Bertans or Tim Hardaway. I think the second thing that we're looking for is, if you're a Mavs fan, you're hoping to get back a rotation player, a veteran of some sort, if that's possible. And then I think the third option, and I think the Mavericks are really looking at this, is that even if they trade the number 10 pick, I really think that they're looking to get another pick back later in the draft. I think that is a goal of theirs. We'll see if they accomplish it. But I think those are the three things. And right now, with as much movement as there's been already this week, I think it's fair to have a little bit of cautious optimism that Dallas can get those three things done.
What are the most attractive specific things on the table for you?
This is one that has been reported a lot, has been a swap with Atlanta. The reporting on it by Mark Stein and by Jake Fisher, and I've heard similar things, is that it's on the table to an extent, but the Mavericks want Clint Capella. Atlanta wants to send John Collins. Clint Capella is a much better fit and more directly addresses this team's needs. And so I think one big question going into draft night is does Atlanta budge on that? And, that could be for any number of reasons, including someone like Cam Whitmore falling to 10, and maybe Atlanta really likes him. And so just the range of options and how much every single thing that happens in the first 9 picks, not just the players drafted, but the trades that happen and how that affects other teams around the league and what they're thinking about, that all eventually comes back and affects the Mavericks. And so, I think that Atlanta one is a big one I'm looking at. Grant Williams in Boston is one that I reported that the Mavericks in Boston have had discussions about that. I feel extremely confident from what I'm hearing that Grant Williams is not going to be back in Boston. So the question is, do the Mavericks try to get in on that? And so, I'm going to tell you right now, in the front office, that's probably like 2 of the 20 moves and ideas that they're kind of thinking about. Right now, and seeing which one is most realistic and which one, they're most excited about and going to push for. But, there's a couple that I think are worth watching, over the next few hours tonight.
So, Tim, there was a report that the Mavericks want to overhaul the center position entirely. In one center, if it is Clint Capella or whoever they want to go after, John Collins, for instance, wouldn't exactly get that done. Is it possible for them to add a Grant Williams and, say, still make a trade with Atlanta and get a Clint Capella, for instance?
I think so. I think the hope is that with the confidence that Grant's not going back to Boston, the Mavericks can make some moves if they move off some salary to, reduce their payroll to the point that they have what you call the full tax or the full taxpayer mid-level. They've got to move off a salary to open that exception, blah, 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 a bunch of CGA legalese. Sometimes around these times, I feel like I do need a law degree. But the point is, if they move off salary, they can have about $12 million. It might be a little bit more than that with the new projections to offer just to a free agent. And Grant Williams is a restricted free agent. Boston would match. But I think after Boston's Porzingis deal, I'm not sure they would anymore. And so I think that is one option, and just, targeting Grant Williams without having to give anything up. But sign and trades, or, some sort of sign and trade is also on the table. The question is just, can you do a sign and trade and give something up and still complete all these other objectives? So, if I'm Dallas, I'm really looking at that and trying to see if, that type of exception offer that would happen without needing to make any sort of trade or send anything back to Boston is something that could happen. Now, that would be July 1st, but they're thinking about July 1st. They're thinking about free agency while they do everything tonight, because it's all interconnected in a lot of ways.
Tim, do you feel like the Mavs front office and the coaching staff are on the same page when it comes to the plans that they're talking about?
I think so. And I think you're probably asking because of Christian Wood last season.
Yeah.
I still think that trade made some sense. They moved off a bunch of contracts. They ended up drafting the player they wanted to draft. They traded last draft's first rounder, but then they traded back up for a second rounder, and they eventually drafted Jaden Hardy. That was their guy. It cost them a couple seconds, but there was salary cap related advantages to doing that deal as well. We all saw how Christian Wood played out, and he's gonna go sign somewhere that will not be Dallas. I have full confidence in that. But I do believe that this front, that the coaching staff has influence and say over what the front office does. And so I do think that even going back to when Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison were hired, I do believe kind of the talking points around that it was a package deal and that they work really synergetically. So even if it doesn't look like it at all times, specifically with Christian Wood, I do think that there's a lot of synergy between those two.
Yeah, it just seems like, though, that we're starting to hear about them talking about adding assistant coaches and adding general manager helpers and things like that. It kind of reminds me of the vibe that they were with Vegas Bob and Rick, and it seemed like they had all these different groups in the front office, and maybe Mark Cuban creating some type of, well, I'm going to ask this guy and this guy, and he's kind of bouncing around. That's really the reason why I asked you this question. With all we're starting to see rumors of them adding pieces to this front office and coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, I've always described it as the most influential person in the Dallas front office. It's not Mark Cuban necessarily, it's who Mark Cuban's listening to, or whether he's just listening to himself. But I do think right now that my understanding is that Mark has not been involved ever since the Nico and Jason hires. Now that may be because their visions align a little bit closer with what he would do anyway. I can't say that for sure, but I think that's a reasonable assumption to make. But I think the hiring of Dennis Lindsay as a consultant, and then they really wanted Frank Vogel on the coaching staff, and I think they would have got him if Vogel did not get a head coaching job, but he did. I think those are more about bringing in voices, contrarian voices and experienced voices, sounding boards for, hey, have we considered all options? And just kind of firms up. To me, it doesn't represent like, oh, these guys are standing by in case we want to change, make changes at GM or head coach. I think it's more, in a weird way, kind of affirming support for Nico and Jason, but also understanding, hey, let's make sure that we are setting them up for success. I think that's Dallas's view of these hires and additions.
Again, you said for the NBA draft with Tim Cato of The Athletic here in the GBag Nation, out of the realistic options for the Mavericks at 10, is there a player that you think they'd love to be there that they would say, hey, we're not passing on him, we're not making a trade?
Yeah, there's a little buzz that they would consider Cam Whitmore if he falls. There's some buzz that they would consider Taylor Hendricks. I don't know to the extent that is possibly them saying that to make, the offers coming in for Tim a little bit more appealing. There's always multiple things going on all at once. And, a team that wants a player who's falling like Whitmore, which is the expectation tonight, that he probably will not be drafted top 9. If the Mavericks have messaging out there saying, oh yeah, we might just take him, there's other teams around the league who are like, okay, well, we want him. And so, maybe they're incentivized to, toss a little bit more into some sort of offer. I think the pick gets traded. I feel pretty confident that they will not draft a player at 10, but I could be wrong in a player who was mocked as high as 5 and Whitmore falling rather unexpectedly because of some medical concerns. That's the type of weird situation that could really change expectations in Dallas. That said, I'm still sticking with my prediction that he gets traded.
So we saw the Porzingis and Marcus Smart trade go down. We saw Chris Paul, Jordan Poole today. What's the biggest, maybe non-Mavs NBA storyline for today and tonight that you're most intrigued by?
I mean, the ones that happened today were pretty big ones. It's going to be hard to top Chris Paul going to be Steph Curry's backup, which is just a funny thing to say out loud. This is a little bit down the line, but as Washington does a complete overhaul, I'm curious what Kyle Kuzma's market kind of looks like and what happens there. And then I think the draft. I asked some people actually on the Mavs, where does the draft begin? That phrase we love, and I think the picks that are really going to kickstart the trades. I'm not even so much talking about players drafted, but like, do these teams trade these picks, which starts its own series of, its own sort of avalanche. I think it's going to be 5 and 7. And so that's Detroit, and that's Indiana. And I'm especially looking at Indiana and very curious about what they do, because I think there's a good chance that, that pick is moved.
Tim Cato, Athletic, you mentioned Kuzma. He's opting out of like 15, right? Once the Mavs re-sign Kyrie Irving, what would be their pathways to try to acquire a player like that?
I don't think there's a good one. I haven't looked at the Mavs specifically, but, it feels like he's someone who's opting out to go get, a big deal. I think it'd be really hard to get a sign and trade done. And it may be that when free agency rolls around that, the trades Dallas makes on draft night are to set up, that 12 million exception, that non-taxpayer exception. They've got to get under the tax line, which I want to say it's something like 20-ish over, the actual salary cap, which starts at 136. Like I said, this is all like feels like it's almost you're talking about something completely different than just like go shoot the ball through the hoop. But these are kind of the things they're thinking about, and I don't think that they're going to have a lot of room or flexibility or ability to go pursue someone for a big contract in the vein that Kyle Kuzma is looking for.
Where'd all this hype for Derek Lively come in the last 3 or 4 days? Am I just late to the party? It seems like that there's been a surge on this, and do you think he's a player that could help the Mavs immediately?
Immediately, no, and that's why I don't think he's really a consideration to be drafted at 10. I heard, and again, this could be the Mavericks trying to angle for like, hey guys, we really might use the pick, better send your best offers. I heard that there are a couple fans of Lively in the front office that, people have considered, what if we just took him outright? I still, like I said, I don't think that happens. I don't think he's a ready now player, even if, he has a lot of potential kind of as one of these modern bigs, modern centers who, block shots. And so, yeah, the buzz has been, that he's been one of the big risers, certainly over the past couple of weeks. It feels like it all came from like some LA workout he did where he hit a bunch of threes. I don't think he projects as a 3-point shooter, certainly not in his first few years. And I'm just not sure how much he projects in a NBA rotation right away. But hey, maybe they do make that trade down with Atlanta. They get Capella. They move 10 to 15. Maybe Lively's still there. Maybe you have Clint Capella on a 2-year contract. He's your center for 2 years. And then if Lively's at 15 and they want to take him there, you've got your, kind of your replacement lined up for him, and you've got time to develop him. So I'm not sure that's, I wouldn't anticipate that's kind of the route Dallas would go if they complete that trade. I think they target elsewhere at 15, but who knows?
Wow, that's great stuff, Tim. Thank you so much for your insights. Fantastic job covering this team, and enjoy the evening. It should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. About to head over to the facility to ask Nico Harrison some questions. You guys got any?
Ooh, perfect.
Any questions to ask?
Yeah, who we taking?
I will do my best. I think I'm going to lead off with hey, is Wembanyama going to slip to 10?
Yeah.
You think he's going to like that one?
I think I'll love that.
I think the most interesting thing right now that's happened is kind of what Brian was hinting around on. Like, Jason Kidd wants defenders so bad, and they've gone away from that. At least they did at the trade deadline. Are they going to – do they need to make a big push back towards defense? And, should that be the dominant factor?
They'll have some more defenders by mid-July. I assure you of that.
Right on. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time. We enjoy all of your work, and we look forward to these questions you're going to ask Nico and responding to them here in the rest of our show.
Absolutely. Thank you all.